know exactly what we're going to do. We are going to make Christmas ornaments, and some of them are going to be easy enough that your kids and grandkids can help out, so stay tuned. Project 1, we're going to use some spindles to make some ornaments, and the first thing I'm going to do is use Paint Couture's white bonding and blocking primer. This helps the paint I'm going to use to bond to the spindles, and it'll also prevent any bleeding of any stains from seeping through the paints that I use. Sometimes I will use some paints that already have built-in primers. Other times I'll use chalk paints, which do need to be primed and sealed. So I'm going to cover those. Now this is a chalk paint. This is black by Folk Art, and I'm going to now paint my spindles this black color. The reason is this is going to be my base color because I plan to use a crackle type of product that will allow for a white paint to be placed over the top of this and crackle, and then you'll be able to see kind of the black seeping through. And I'm going to do all of my spindles in this color. Here they are dried, and this is the Crackle Medium by Dixie Belle. It is a very thick medium, almost like a runny glue. So you're going to paint this on and you're going to let it dry usually for about 24 hours. However, when I was putting this on, it appeared to be beading up on my spindle, and so I was not quite certain it was going to work. So I did allow for it to sit to the side and dry for a few hours. I also used my heat gun, and then I'm taking Waverly's white chalk paint, and I'm going to paint over it. Now I'm showing this in the regular speed because I want you to see how you just want to kind of paint in one direction. Try not to go over the same area that you painted twice. It's hard to do, but the more you do it, the more you'll figure out how much paint needs to go on your brush. It starts to crackle immediately, so I was really impressed. I was pleased with how this was turning out. I'm going to go ahead and finish this one, and I'll show you how it looks, and then I'll go back and put the Crackle Medium on my other spindles, followed by this white chalk paint next. And this is a close-up after, it hasn't even really dried at this point. It's just already crackling, which is very nice. So I'm gonna put the medium over the rest of my spindles. I'll let that dry for, I'll let dry for 24 hours. I did let it dry overnight before I came back in and placed the white chalk paint. Now I'm going to put some eye hooks in the base. I already placed them on the tops of the spindles before I ever painted them. I'm going to put them on the bottom of the spindles. This is a tool from Cricut. I call it an awl. It's a stabbing device or a pick. But I'm just going to place these in the bottoms of all of my spindles, except for the one that looks kind of like a flat spoon. I don't put one in the bottom of it. So there's one in the top and the bottom of 4 of the spindles. Now this is the Rub and Buff. It's gold. I want the eye hooks to be colored gold. I don't want them to be silver. So I'm just going to put that on my eye hooks and let that dry. Of course, chalk paint needs to be sealed, so I'm going to seal it with this clear wax first. I'll wipe it on and then wipe it off. I am going to use an aging wax, but if you put the dark aging wax on first, that chalk paint is really going to pick up that deep brown, and I don't want it to look brown. I just want it to look aged. So I'm going to do the clear wax first, and then I'm going to come in with DIY's dark wax and go over it. And so you'll see that it'll allow for me to age it without making the spindles too dark. So I'll paint it on, wipe it back on all of my spindles. Now it's time to decorate the spindles, and this is where the little kitties can get involved. I am going to make tassels for my spindles. Now I started out making this tassel, and you're going to see that at some point I'm going to realize this is a very short tassel. But I just take my jute, twirl it around my hand, tie it off in the middle, and then cut the ends to make the tassel. I'm going to take some jute, run it through. Actually, this is not jute. This is a thick crochet thread. And I'm going to put that on the end of a pin. Now, I'm running the needle through my beads to make sure it fits all the way through. Sometimes the beads are too narrow to fit over some of these needles, and I wanted to make sure that it would fit over this needle before I threaded it and began to use it. So I'm going to thread the crochet thread through the needle, and then I'm going to put my beads on the end of my spindle. I'm going to separate that and then I'm just going to tie the tassel on there directly. Once I tie that on, I'll use a piece of jute to go around the outside of it. I'll fold it in half, and now I'll tie a piece of jute around the top there, or else I picked up the wrong thread is what I did there. So, but here's the jute. I'm going to tie that on. And I do, 2 or 3, and then I wrap it around, and then I'll tie it again. Make sure it's securely tight, because that's what's holding my beads on. And then I burn all the fuzz off of the tassel. Now I looked at it and I thought, I don't know if I like that tassel, but let me finish the top part. So I thread the jute through the top eye hook. I'm going to put the needle on both ends of the jute, and then I'm going to thread my gold bead onto both of the strands there, and then I'm going to tie several knots in the top to hold it in place. Also, you can use a drop of glue from your glue gun here, and then I burned the fuzz off, tied it in a knot to use for a hanger, and then I just frayed the ends, make it look more like a fuzzy little tassel. And that's my ornament. And see, I'm like, yeah, I hate this, so let's take this off. So I slid a pair of tweezers in to prevent the beads from coming off, and I'm just going to make a much longer tassel here. It's probably going to be about, I would say, maybe 12 inches, so that you get a 6-inch tassel once it's halved. Cut that off. I'm going to thread some jute through the end of that tied string, and then I'm going to find the halfway point on my tassel that I'm making, tie that on snugly, fold it in half, and then tie the jute around the top part of the tassel. I will wrap that around. Wrap, wrap, wrap. There we go. I'll knot that. Trim it off, and then I'm going to cut the ends of the tassel. I'll use my lighter to burn any of the fuzz off of the jute. And I realized there's a space at the end, so I found these wooden stars and I just glue it to the end. I thought it was cute. I thought about making it gold, but then I like the way that the natural looks. Now I'm going to take my spindles and I'm going to repeat this process, but I'm going to use different beads. And there's all different combinations that you can use. You can do silvers, golds, different colored beads, natural colored beads. You can paint your beads white, you can stain them, just whatever your preference is. And this is where, you know, getting your children or your grandchildren involved can be fun, because they can help you make that decision. Again, I'm going to make a tassel here. Tie and wrap the top, wrap it some more. And knot it off. Trim the ends and burn the fuzz carefully. Have water around your fire extinguisher, etc. I've been doing this for years. I've never caught anything on fire, but I do use precautions. Now here, I don't use my needle. What I'm going to do is I actually will, now that opening was not big enough, so I opened it up with my tweezers. But I put a little glue on the end, a little hot glue. This is a low temperature glue stick, so that's why I was able to put my fingers on it directly and just make kind of like a needle out of the glue that made it easy to thread through the wooden beads. And I'll tie that off. I'll burn my fuzz and fray the ends. And I love the natural bead look. On this one, I'm going to use a combination of gold and white, a painted white wooden bead for the tassel end. The gold beads have a narrow opening, so I did have to use the needle on this one. Making my tassel again. This is the last tassel I will be making. My fourth spindle, I'm going to do something completely different, and you will see that in just a moment. Trim and burn the fuzz, and then we're going to put some beads in the top. Again, it'll be a gold bead. When you're using beads, always check the openings of your beads to make sure it's going to fit on whatever string, yarn, jute that you're using. And also check and make sure that the needle is always going to fit through if you're going to use a needle. Now on this one, I'm going to take some velvet ribbon. I'm going to just put that through, kind of make a long piece here, glue it together. I'm going to tie a piece around the top in just a moment. You will see over to the side in the right upper hand corner there some bling, essentially. These are some rhinestone snowflakes. I ordered them from totallydazzled.com. A great place to get cameos and rhinestone type things. Now I'm going to make a Kathy Jo bow. I slowed this down so that those of you who've asked me about it can hopefully see how I do it. It's not hard to do. I do several of these throughout the video, so you'll have more opportunity to learn to make one. put the ends of the bow together so that when I trim it, they're the same length and going in a similar direction. So I dovetail it, of course. I'm going to glue it to where the knot was made earlier. And then at the end of this, I'm going to glue on this really pretty rhinestone snowflake. Again, that's from totallydazzled.com. I'm not an affiliate, I just like their product. I should become an affiliate, maybe one day. And then I'm going to put a hanging velvet ribbon at the top. I'll tie that off and dovetail the top of it too. Now this is a flat spindle that comes from the back of the chair, and I just trimmed it off. It looks kind of spoon shaped. I'm going to put this mold from IOD. It's a mold from their Christmas collection, and I did put cornstarch in it, and I'm using DAS, D-A-S air dry clay to do the casting. I take a straight edge to flatten it out on the back and turn it over and let gravity help release the casting from the mold. I'll use some Titebond Quick and Thick with my Titebond brush, and I'll lay that down. Now I don't show it a lot on here, but I will take a brush, and you can see there I'm wiping out away the excess glue that kind of came out, and this also helps me to make sure the edges are snugly fit against the item. And I'm going to take the same chalk paint that I used to paint this with, and I'm going to paint the casting while it is still wet, because painting it while it's wet will prevent it from cracking as it dries. Here's the product painted. And what I'm going to do is use some white wax. Now you'll see there's some darken up because my brush still had some dark wax in it. It's okay. I'm just going over it to seal it with this white wax. Wipe that back, and actually it's clear wax, not white. And then I'm going to take the Dark and Decrepit, and I'm going to begin to add in depth by painting the inside, wiping it back. And I will do this over and over and over until I get the levels of depth that I'm looking for. This is kind of it's hard to talk somebody through it. It's just a thing that I look at and I say, I like that, let's go with that, or I need to pull that back a little bit. I do use a clean brush to pull back some of it because I want most of the depth to be closest to the actual picture that's in the casting. I'm going to go around the edges with it. I'll do the bow. Wiping back any excess. I'm going to go along the edges of it that's next to the spindle itself, and that will give the casting a little bit more depth and set it apart from the spindle. Now this is some Rub and Buff gold, antique gold. I'm going to go around some of the high points, definitely around the frame of the little picture in the casting, and I'll put some gold in on the leaves and the berries. Now I'm going to take my Dark and Decrepit again, go back in with a heavier hand this time, adding more depth, especially along the edges of the castings. And that's going to make the picture stand out a lot more. There are some little tiny flowers on the top and bottom of this casting, and I really want those to stand out. And you can see here how I'm going along the edge between the casting and the spindle. Again, just to set it apart and make it pop a little bit more and stand out from the spindle itself. I'm going to do the bow the same way too. This type of painting technique is also going to be used later in the video on some Christmas ball ornaments that I'm going to repurpose. I'm going to take my black velvet ribbon, run it through the top of the eye hook for the hanger. Now after it had dried, I decided that I wanted to lighten up some areas in the little picture to make it pop. So I'm doing that, going along some of the edges just to highlight some things. And then I'll take my rub and buff in a minute and add a little bit more gold back to some of the areas that I really want to have a little extra gold on. Now I'm going to take some black chalk paint and just go around the edges and the crevices of the spindles. Again, I'm adding depth here. Okay, now we need to begin to paint the ball ornaments. So you saw at the beginning of the video the green plastic balls that I had thrifted and poured those out. And so I'm creating a holder for that using some floral foam, an old book, and some skewers that you can get in the cooking section at the grocery store. And these are what I'm going to do to use to paint and dry them. Now this part is going to be the plastic ornament that I had gotten from Dollar Tree. I've had it for a while. It actually may have been given to my daughter in a gift at one point. I'm going to use the red Fusion Highlander. Yes, I did use the primer, the bonder. This particular paint also has a primer. I do 3 coats. It probably would have been fine to use it without the primer, but it didn't hurt adding it. I'm going to use this mold from Designs by Prima. This is going to make a nice little border on the ornament. Pressed in my DOS air dry clay after I used some cornstarch. Let gravity help me get the casting out of the mold, and I'm just kind of trying it out to see if it fits and how it's going to fit on there. I put my Titebond Quick and Thick on, use my Titebond little paintbrush to spread my glue, and I'm going to apply this to the edge of the ornament all the way around. It will require a second casting. I tap that down on the edges to make sure that it is adhered all the way around. I don't show me doing all of that because I spend a good deal of time making sure the casting is fixed snugly to the ornament itself. Now this is my second casting. I'm going to do the exact same thing here. At this point my little brush was needing cleaning because it was starting to pick up the casting. Put it down, I pinch off the excess, kind of work the ends together, make sure that the edges are down snugly, and I'm going to paint it while it's still wet with the red Highlander paint also. I do usually put 2 coats on this. Yeah, there you go, 2 coats. After it's dried, I'm going to begin to paint the surface, or put castings on the surface. I'm going to use the laurel and the swag there in this particular mold. Again, this is an IOD mold. I'm using the DOS air dried clay, and I'm going to work that into the laurel casting there and the swag casting down below. I will remove the excess, use a straight edge to make sure it's flat along the back, and allow gravity to remove the casting from the mold. Now, the laurel was very fragile and thin, so I had to take it out in parts. That's okay. As you put it back you can put it back together again as you put it on the surface you're going to place it on. Now, I realized later, much later, that my laurel was not quite centered, but I think I got around it, so you'll see that. I'm using my brush and the pick tool to make sure the edges are together. This is the swag I'm going to put across the back of it. On the front, in the middle of the laurel, I'm going to use a Totally Dazzled cameo that I got from them, and it's so pretty. Again, painting it the Highlander red. Now, I did use a paintbrush earlier to remove any excess glue and to make sure the edges of the casting were adhered well before I started painting it. Same thing with the laurel on the front, and I am again painting them wet with the Highlander red from Fusion Paint. I'm going to use my Dark and Decrepit glaze, and I'm going to go around the edges. Again, I want this to stand out from the red background, so this is going to add depth. You're going to go all the way around the edges and in the centers, and use it to define anything within the casting that you want to stand out and draw attention to. I'm going to do the bow trim that's around the edge. Again, go around the edge of the casting next to the ornament. And I love this Dark and Decrepit glaze from DIY for this very purpose. You can also use a dark brown paint or a black paint, but I really like this glaze for this purpose. Now, once I have the edges the way I want, and it's the depth is in there, I am going in on the edge here, adding more depth within the actual casting itself here, just to make the different parts pop. There's leaves and roses and bows along this edge, and doing this makes it just easier to see. Once I complete this, I'm going to take my rub and buff. I'm going to paint the silver top gold, put that on, and I'm going to take the rub and buff and, well, not yet. I got to put my cameo on now. That, again, I got that from Totally Dazzled, but I also highlight the casting with the rub and buff gold. Now, the first two projects I've done so far, they may be a little bit more complicated for the kiddies. However, you don't have to be this complicated. You could keep this very simple, one color, one paint, beads. You could use stickers. There's all kinds of things you could do to get the children involved. I'm going to add a velvet ribbon, trim that off, and I'm doing another Kathy Jo bow here. I will trim the edges together. Actually, I didn't. I just trimmed them, and I'm going to glue that on. I did recognize that the laurel was not quite centered. I'm hoping the bow detracts from that. Again, I got the cameo from totallydazzled.com, and here's a close-up of that. Now I'm going to go and paint the rest of the balls. I do also use the white bonding and blocking primer. These balls are plastic here. Later in the video, I remembered I had some Thrifted silver balls. Again, I primed those too because I don't know if this paint would bleed through. Now I'm going to take the metallic champagne gold and I'm going to paint one of the balls completely gold. I will put 3 coats of this on there, and then 2 of the balls I will do half gold on the top and half gold on the bottom. The one that I did the half gold on the bottom, I did not use later in the video. Also, I will paint one of these balls completely white using the white chalk paint. And here are the silver balls that I had thrifted. They're pretty just like they are, but I wanted to use them for something else, so I'm going to prime them and I'm going to paint them. One, I'm going to paint completely white using a white chalk paint. The other, I will paint a different kind of a brownish color. I'll show you that later on in the video. And then the other I'm going to do, actually I'm going to do two brown. Now here's the one that I did half gold on the top. I'm going to do half red on the bottom. And this is the ornament that I don't end up using. Here's the white chalk paint that I used from Folk Art. It's Blanc Cottage or White Cottage. And again, just painting that ball white. I do 2 to 3 coats of it also. This is Woodwick. This is the brown I'm going to use. So that last ornament you saw, I painted the top part white. I'm going to paint the bottom part this brown color, but I'm going to go on and paint a couple of balls completely this color, and I will give it 3 coats. Now the brown ornament, I'm going to use this jute twine, and I'm just going to take my glue gun, put hot glue on, and I'm going to wrap this jute twine all around the ornament. You will see ornaments like this out and about, Hobby Lobby, Walmart, Michael's, even some of the other online places. Jute twine ornaments were popular last year, seems to be popular this year too, and I wanted to make one of my own. I'll trim that edge, poke that little tip in there. I do burn the fuzz off. It also helps to get rid of any of like the glue strands. I pat it down, and I'm going to use the rub and buff to paint the top. I'm going to apply some florals with some tiny little pine cones and red berries. I actually thrifted these floral pieces. They do have similar ones on Amazon though. I'm going to use some green velvet ribbon as my hanger. Tie a knot, and I'll show you the finished product here in just a second. And it's just a simple floral topped jute twine Christmas ornament. Now we're going to do a beaded ornament. This one I almost abandoned. So I'm taking the ball that I painted completely gold, 3 coats of that paint, and I have these neutral colored beads. I believe they're glass beads actually. I think they're plastic. Along with some buttons and later on some gold beads to fill in some of the spaces. And I just glue them on and put them together, fit them together like a puzzle. This is another one the kiddies can do. Of course, you'll need to help them with any hot glue, but they can take beads and buttons and just any little object like this to make their own little Christmas ornament. Now, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, I like it. No, I don't. I don't really like it. At one point, I thought it might have it looked like a tumor at one point, like I needed to get a doctor for it. And I was thinking that I might just abandon the project, but I said I'll just keep going. So I take some rub and buff, for the tip, and I want to also put a little bit of gold highlight over some of the more brown areas, just to make them pop a little bit. I'm going to paint the top with the antique gold. It was kind of a bright gold. I didn't like it, and I'm going to glue the top onto the ornament. I'm filling in some spaces with some gold beads here. Again, still not liking it, but liking it better than I did. You know, a bow sometimes is like cheese. It makes everything better. So I'm putting on this bow. I got this ribbon, I believe, from either Hobby Lobby or the Dollar Tree. The pattern is only on one side though, but I dovetail the ends. I'm going to glue that on, and I'm going to use this thin ribbon as a hanger. I use a hook to push it through, and I'll just tie it in a knot at the top of the ornament to hang it on the tree. Is this my favorite? No. Is it cute enough? Yes. Would I give it to anybody? Probably not. But I do like it. When all was said and done, I liked it. It's interesting, to say the least. Now I'm going to use some pearls to make my next ornament, and these are some leftover old bows. I bought them for my daughter a long time ago. Her hair was quite thick, so they never really worked, but I'm just going to undo them. I bought them from Temu, I believe, a long time ago, or Amazon. Temu may not have been around when I bought those, but yeah, I'm just going to take some hot glue and just put it on the ball and stick it into the bowl of beads. This reminded me of, you know, breading a cutlet. You put your egg wash on and stick it in the flour. Same concept, guys. Put your glue on, stick it in the beads. Press it down into place afterwards. And I'm using a heat gun to heat them up a little bit to make sure that they are all level, stuck down, and that there's no glue strings anywhere. And I'm going to use my rub and buff to paint the tip and the little topper for the ornament. And you could use any bead. You could use all colored glass beads, just whatever. Again, this would be a fun one with the children too. And then here is the velvet ribbon I'm going to use for my hanger. I'll tie that in a knot, and I'm going to put a cute little black bow on. And there is the pearl Christmas ornament. Now in this one, I'm going to use some buttons, and I decided to use these wooden buttons. Now these wooden buttons have designs on them, and I was looking through them to see, okay, do I want to do one of one design? I didn't have enough to do all one design, so I decided to use the wooden side outward for the majority of it, and then use some of the buttons that reminded me of candy canes as some little punches of color. And I'm using my heat gun to keep it, keep the button, the glue a little bit melted, so I can adjust the buttons is what I'm doing there. You have to be careful with this ornament. It's made out of plastic, so low heat glue gun is helpful. Make sure you don't burn your ornament with your heat gun when you're trying to adjust your buttons. But that's what I'm doing when you see me use the heat gun. I'm getting the glue melted again so I can kind of adjust the buttons so that they're a little bit more even. I ordered these buttons from Amazon a number of years ago to use for something else. I wasn't even doing DIY at the time, but I've had them for a long time, so I don't even know if they could be found again, but you could use something similar that you could find at Michael's, Hobby Lobby, you know, Amazon, just whatever. And I'm putting the rest of them on to kind of see how it's going to fit in there, if I need to adjust any or not. and I finished that up. I'm going to paint the tip and the little hat that goes on and glue it on. Actually, I didn't have to glue this one on. It clicked right back into place. And I'm going to use some gold ribbon for my hanger. And then I have some lace. I'm going to make a sweet little lace bow. So this one is a little more rustic than my other ones. But I do like the way it turned out. I'm going to glue my little lace bow on. And here is my little button ornament. Now these are the ornaments that are going to look like just some old world ornaments. I'm going to take one of them and paint the top part with the crackle medium. I'm just going to go halfway around the ball here with the crackle medium. And I'm going to set that to the side and let that dry. And then afterwards I'm going to take my chalk paint and I'm going to paint the top part of it with that's got the crackle medium on it with the chalk paint. I'm going to leave that bottom part brown. So this is going to be more of a neutral color. It starts to crackle immediately. I really like the way that this worked out. I will seal it with a wax later on, a clear wax actually. And to help things dry a little bit, and it even crackles even better when you use the heat gun to dry it with. Now I'm going to make a bunch of castings for these balls. There's 3 balls I'm going to be decorating with these castings. This particular mold I got off of Amazon about 2 years ago. I don't know who makes it, but it works pretty decent. And I put cornstarch in about 3 or 4 of the different molds, and I'm going to use my DOS air dry clay to create my castings. I'm just going to work it in and remove excess clay. I'll use a straight edge at some point to make sure it's flat along the back, and of course I will use gravity as I flip it over, bend the mold back to allow the gravity to dislodge the casting from the mold itself. I will apply these molds to the balls using Type Bond Quick and Thick in a moment. And I make sure the edges are adhered. I remove any extra glue using a paintbrush. I didn't quite show that in the interest of time. Here's the next casting that I'll place on the red and gold two-tone ball. I'll remove the excess glue, and then the plain white ball, I'll just have this simple casting on it. To the 2 other balls, I will add some additional scroll work all the way around, just to go along that divide to make that edge look clean. And I use my paintbrush to go around the edge to remove excess glue and to make sure the edges are snug against the side of the ornament. Alright, now I'm going to use my chalk paint to paint the casting. The casting is still wet. I'm going to go all the way around. I will use some of the brown paint later on to touch up any areas that got on the white, that got on the brown. Again, the same thing there. And now I'm going to use the gold paint to paint this casting. Now once this dries and I do any touch-ups, you see here I'm going to use the brown to touch up where I got white on the brown surface. Once I do that, I will take my Dark and Decrepit and I will begin to go around the edges to add depth and go along the details of the casting and the crevices to add depth. So I'm just completing my touch-up work here. All right, here's a dark and decrepit. I'm going into any divots, folds along, and I actually paint the underneath sides of the mold. Again, it's going to make it stand out from the ornament. You'll be able to see it a little bit better if you're like across the room or something. I'm going to take some of the white paint and just kind of go back over where I put in some of the dark and decrepit that may have gotten a little bit too much on the surface. Now this is the gold rub and buff. I also will paint the tip of it and the top with the rub and buff, the antique gold rub and buff. I'll put the top back on, and I'm going to use a nice piece of ribbon here for my hanger. And here is the finished product. There will be another view at the end. Again, we're going to do the same technique. Dark and decrepit along the edge, on the side of the casting and the edge of the ornament. And then remember to also take this dark and decrepit and go into any crevices, creases, raised areas that are actually on the front of the casting. So I'm doing that there. And I'm showing you here, you don't have to do this very delicately. You can just put that stuff on there, and it doesn't have to be perfect. Because what you'll do next is you'll take your white paint and dry brush over the top of it. So it pushes that dark and decrepit into the crevices while leaving the white on the surface. Again, we're adding that depth there. Now I'm going to age this ball in a moment using first some white wax and then some dark wax. So this is just the dark wax that's been added. And I'm going to put that on, wipe it back. And this is just going to look like an old, almost like a stone textured ornament. And then I'm taking, after I put the dark wax on, there were some areas that were a little too dark. I'm using the clear wax to erase it with. Clear wax can act just like an eraser. And I'm adding a little bit more of the dark and decrepit along the edges. Just more depth. Feathering it out a bit. Feather, 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 right there. Adding a little bit more back into the top part. So there's a lot of like, put it on, rub it off, put other things on, rub it off. This is the rub and buff, the gold rub and buff. I put some of that on there too. Again, paint the lid and the tip of the ornament, put the lid on the ornament, or the topper on the ornament, and use some pretty lace ribbon for my hanger. And here is the finished product. I think it turned out pretty. And this is going to be my last ornament. And again, we're going to take the dark and decrepit and we're going to paint along the edges. This technique, it can be time consuming, but it's not hard to do. Anybody can take a dark paint or glaze and go along the edge of their casting that they've put on something to make it just stand out from whatever they've put it on. And if you mess it up, guess what? You can paint over it and do it again. It's okay. Now, I am going to be running out of juice on my phone. My phone dies at some point, so you will not see me add some extra antiquing to the gold and red surfaces. And I also added a sweet little red jewel to the center of this casting. And so my phone's about to die right here, and it's dead. And when I come back, I have antiqued it, I've added the jewel, I've done the ribbon buff on the topper, and I have added a sweet little velvet ribbon for my hanger. I think it turned out precious. And here are the finished products on a Christmas tree. This is a tree that my daughter keeps up year round. We usually keep other things on it for other holidays. I removed those and just put these ornaments on so that you could kind of see them hanging. My tassel's not quite straight. I've got to work on that a little bit, but you get an idea of what it would look like. Y'all, I want to thank you so much for tuning in to watch this today. I know it was a long one, but I hope you got some ideas and inspiration to use for items in your own home, even doing some decorating with the children and the grandchildren. Please like and subscribe and share. And please feel free to comment, constructive comments. It's always welcome, and I do. Right now, I'm able to reply to everybody. So thank you so much, and I will see you in the next video.